Housing alone is never enough. I know this because I come from a woman who carried 8 children on her back and the world built to break her. Life was rough. The bills never matched the money, and she worked 2 jobs that still left her choosing what to pay and what to let slide. I remember her at the kitchen table with a stack of bills, trying to stretch $20 into what felt like 20 needs. Countless of times, I heard her say over the years that she only had enough money to cover the bills or buy groceries, and she would rather rob Peter to pay Paul than let her children go hungry. Even as a child, I felt how heavy that was. She faced racism at work, landlords who treated us like we were disposable, and the world that made her fight for every small thing she had. She was exhausted, but she kept going because her children depended on her. And that kind of pressure sits deep in your bones. Frederick Douglass once said that without the struggle, there is no progress. The struggle may be emotional, mental, or physical, but it still must be a struggle. Well, my mother lived that truth every day, and her struggle shaped the way I learned to survive. So when I say that the odds were never in my favor and that the American dream was not created for me, I mean that with every part of my being. So to cope with the weight of being black and poor, I drifted towards the streets. I started hanging out with the wrong crowd. I skipped school. I ran from home. And by 14, I was labeled a delinquent, locked up in juvenile hall and discharged to foster care with nothing but a backpack and a prayer. But I was confused because I was never neglected or abused. I was taken because a system created by the dominant group had decided that a black woman could not raise or control her own child, and that strangers who knew nothing about my life could do a better job. So they sent me to homes in the suburbs, far from everything I knew. One day I was in East Oakland, California, and the next I was living with people who had no idea what it meant to grow up black and poor. Well, they believed that they were offering me a better life, but it was not my life. It was their version of safety, not my reality. So I kept my guard up. And when they pushed for answers, all they heard from me was, I don't know. And from that silence, they saw it as defiance and created their own idea of who I was and what I needed. So I ran. I ran from every foster home and group home they placed me in because those placements never honored who I was or where I came from. I lost my community, my culture, and my identity. By 18, I aged out with a baby on my hip and a PhD in street criminology. But I had to ask myself a question. If the system believed temporary parents and group homes could raise me better than my own mother, then why did I leave the system worse off than I entered it? I had no safety nets, no place to live. I applied for housing programs, but all I received was a place on the wait list. So I did what my mother did. I worked low income jobs that barely covered anything. I stretched every dollar until it tore apart in my hands. I was forced to decide between paying the bills and feeding my family. And I chose to feed my family, the same choice that my mother had to make. So 10 years later, I found myself homeless again, this time with 4 kids. But I'm not here to dwell on that pain. I'm here to talk about what changed. This time around, as a homeless adult with children, everything was different. I ended up in a homeless shelter for families, and it was there that I rediscovered my inner power because I finally found social workers who actually had my back. And for the first time, I let my guard down. I realized that they weren't working against me, they were working for me and with me. And they saw my potential when I could not see it myself. And when you meet people who believe in you before you even believe in yourself, it hits hard. It's different. So with their support, I got my Section 8 voucher. I found a place to live. And let me tell you, that home gave me a space to breathe, space to think, and a space to grow into the version of myself I did not even know what was possible. But I knew housing alone was not going to save me. I still had to figure out how to stand on my own, how to keep that roof, how to build a life that will not collapse when things got hard. So I went back to school. First, I earned my GED and kept pushing to earn my master's in social work. Then I took all that pain and all that struggle and all that fire, and I went to work straight into homeless services because I wanted to fight for young people who were still trying to find a way out. And that's where I met Peanut and Skip. So, Peanut and Skip, I will never forget the day that those two walked into the drop-in center. They were both 19 years old, both carrying their whole lives in a backpack, just like I once did. Peanut was a former foster youth battling crystal meth. His vulnerability score was high, and that opened every door for him: permanent supportive housing, mental health support, and a real chance to rebuild his life. Skip, he had the same backpack, but he had a part-time job and he was trying to stay clean on methadone. So because he was doing so well, his score was low and he got rapid rehousing with a 12-month subsidy. And after that subsidy ended, he fell back to homelessness. And it should have never happened. And this is where the system reveals its biggest flaws. Let's start with the approach. So Housing First is created for chronically homeless adults. The premise is that if you house someone immediately and then start addressing their challenges, that they'll be better off in the long run. While this approach can work for adults, it doesn't translate to youth because they need guidance for day one. They need someone walking beside them and helping them navigate those challenging systems. CARS, which is the Coordinated Assessment and Resource System, it's the tool that decides a young person's vulnerability score. And this tool was also built for chronically homeless adults. So it decides their fate, not based on their efforts, but based on how broken they appear on paper. And then, as for the housing programs, Section 8 is the best option, but the wait can take years. So, for most young people, it's a long shot, which makes permanent supportive housing the best option currently available. It offers a stable home and wraparound care. However, participation in those support services is not mandatory. And if a young person grew up in systems that watched and judged them, they will not always open the door for another person with a clipboard. And for the young people who do not qualify for permanent supportive housing, the only door left open is rapid rehousing. And the moment they step into it, time becomes their enemy. Rapid rehousing gives them an apartment with a 12 to 18-month deadline. And when that deadline hits, they either take over the rent or fall back into homelessness. And here's the travesty of it all that ties all these programs together. Every subsidy depends on income staying below the federal poverty line. One raise, one small step forward, and the entire foundation drops from underneath them. So, giving a young person a key is not the same as giving them stability. And this brings us to the biggest barrier young people face today: the pathway to real employment. Most youth employment programs, they don't offer careers. They offer low-wage, high-stress jobs that keep young people exhausted and broke. They hand out trainings that lead to nowhere. They focus on job readiness instead of income. They push youth into part-time positions that cannot pay the rent anywhere in this country. And nobody talks to them about college or financial aid. They just tell them to get a job and be grateful. So granted, programs do exist that work for young people, but there's not enough of them and they're siloed. One offers housing, another offers a mentor, another offers job training. Another office case management. Young people move from program to program, retelling their story, rebuilding trust, and hoping that the next service will fill the gaps that the last one left behind. No single model brings everything together under one roof. No model treats stability as a system instead of a service. And this truth is what led me to create Roots. Roots stands for Real Opportunities to Overcome, Transform, and Succeed. Roots is not a program, it's a framework. It's a vision that I'm building right now. It's still growing, still developing, still taking shape. But the heartbeat is clear. Roots is a social staffing agency created for young people trying to break cycles of instability. It's built like an employment agency, but it's grounded in mentorship, housing support, and opportunity. In Roots, youth receive paid work tied to real career pathways, employment navigators, housing navigators, case managers, and trusted mentors. Roots is different because it doesn't just hand out a key and start a countdown clock. It does not push youth into low wage jobs that keeps them stuck. And it does not wait for crisis before showing up. Roots starts early in the process. It builds a foundation first, and it surrounds young people with support that follows them, not support that expires. And the goal is simple to create something that does not depend on one city or one program, but to build something that can live anywhere, a framework any community can use to help young people build real lives and never return to homelessness. That is what makes it powerful. That is what makes it transformative. And that's what makes it necessary. Now, here's my ask. I'm not asking you to fund a program. I'm not asking you to start a nonprofit. I'm asking you to show up. Show up where decisions are made, city council meetings, community spaces, school boards. Those rooms decide funding. Those rooms decide priorities. Those rooms decide who gets help and who does not. Speak the names of the programs that work. Plant seeds in the rooms where youth are too often left out. Your presence can spark change, but your silence helps no one. And your voice can shake the room and change the vote. Mm. So you may have never been homeless or carried your whole life in a backpack, and that's okay. You do not need to live it to understand how heavy it is. You only need the courage to look at it and not turn away. Because change does not begin with budgets or laws. It begins with people who decide the status quo is not enough. People who understand that young people need more than roofs, they need roots. We do not end youth homelessness by looking away. We end it when everyday people step up and refuse to remain silent. Youth deserve opportunity. Youth deserve a system that believes in them. And if nobody else says it in those rooms, then I will. And after today, I hope you will too. Because housing alone is never enough. Thank you for listening.